еще не написанных сколько, скажи, кукушка, пропой. В городе мне жителей на выселках камнем лежать или гореть звездой, звездой. Солнце мое, взгляни на меня. Моя ладонь превратилась в кулак. И если есть порох, дай огня. Вот так. Кто пойдет по следу одинокому? Сильные да смелые головы сложили в поле, в бою. Мало кто остался в светлой памяти, в трезвом уме да с твердой рукой в строю, в строю. Солнце мое, взгляни на меня. Моя ладонь превратилась в кулак. И если есть порох, дай огня. Вот так.
You are listening to This Week in Clown World with Ben and Hobbs, so sit back, relax, take your black pill, and enjoy the show.
You're there.
Yeah.
Can you what's wrong, Hobbs? Well, we thought we were live.
You unmuted the wrong mic.
Did I? That one's got feedback.
There we
go. For some reason, your other mic has feedback, Hobbs.
So this is not going to work.
No. Stand by, people.
Okay. What the fuck?
I have no idea.
Okay. So.
How about now?
Switch over to, okay, yeah. I'm going to go links out of that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so we're just going to roll with the old laptop camera, since it seems like my dual streaming thing does not want to cooperate. Hello, fellow extremists. It is once again time for This Week in Clown World, coming to you live from the new Casa del Habbo podcasting studio. It's been a while. I've been moving into the new house, got some new digs going on here. It'll hopefully be a lot better. How have you been in the internegnum there, Ben?
We tried to get the show going a couple times. Just a lot of weird shit keeping it. We've been having a lot of issues with BeLive. I think we probably need to find something else. Their tech support hasn't been responding to our issues, so we weren't able to go live for a couple times, but here we are. I did find out they're based out of Israel, so maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, they don't like us, I guess.
I don't know. I'm not sure, but their tech support has been unresponsive, and here we are. We made it finally.
Yes, we did. Well, there has been a lot going on in the last couple of weeks. So, where do you want to start?
I don't know. Let's talk about your boy AJ real quick.
Yes, the most misunderstood and most lied about man in America, my boy.
F's in the chat.
Yes,
They finally got him.
They think they did.
Yeah, 42
so,
million.
That's what they're saying, but a lot of times these things tend to get talked down, settled down. It's like 42 million, 49 million, 4 million, 4.1 million, something like that. I'm not sure what the final amount is right now, but initially the prosecution went in wanting 150 million. And the jury came back something like 4.1 million, and now somebody else is saying 49 million. I'm not 100% sure, because at one point the prosecution was floating the idea of going for $3 billion, which absolutely.
What are they figuring the damages are, just because he didn't want to? I don't understand how they're figuring the damages that he did.
Well, the thing is that not only does the Sandy Hook defamation case end up being bad for Alex Jones and InfoWars, but it also sets a very dangerous precedent for any legal cases moving forward, because the initial lawsuit was that by denying the events of the Sandy Hook school shooting and calling into question the existence of the parents and children as real people and not crisis actors, Alex Jones caused them great emotional distress. Now, the thing is that the Sandy Hook school shooting was something like 12 years ago. And while there were initially a lot of questions regarding the events of the school shooting, Alex Jones has since apologized profusely for ever doubting the events of the school shooting. He has apologized for insinuating that any of the people involved were crisis actors. He has admitted that once all of the details were brought to light, that while there are still some suspicious and unanswered questions regarding the official narrative of the day, that people did die, parents did lose their children, and the events of that day were more or less they happened as we were told they happened. So this was like within a few months of the event happening. And the thing about Alex Jones is that when he gets the suspicion that something is a false flag event or something, he's usually very bombastic, and then things come out, he puts all the pieces together, and then he gets a much more level-headed approach to things down the line. Now, what's dangerous about the case moving forward, not just for Alex Jones and not for people like us, but for media in general, is that what they are calling defamation was his 30,000-foot view and opinionated speculations in the early hours of an event happening. He was wrong. He admitted he was wrong, and he apologized to his viewers and to the families of the event for being wrong and causing any type of emotional distress. But at the time that he was saying things, he believed that what he was saying was true, given the information that he had. So one cannot accuse him of willfully lying or misrepresenting events, because the information that he had at that time was what he was going off of. Now, contrast that to other media outlets that are, or can at least be speculated to be willfully lying about certain events and representing what they are saying as truth.
Mhm.
Recently, we have all of the Trump scandals that turned out to be, not just overblown, not just hyperbole, but fabricated out of whole cloth, just outright lies. Hitting a little bit closer to home, can my friends and the families of my friends that fought and were injured or died in Iraq sue major media outlets under the same grounds for the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq lie? That it can be reasonably assumed that these media outlets knew the truth and lied anyways because they were pushing a government narrative. Can my friends and the families of my friends who were injured or died in Iraq sue government officials who willfully and knowingly lied to the American people in order to prosecute a war? If the Alex Jones defamation, and I use that term because that's their terminology, he didn't defame anybody, but if that is allowed to stand, it opens up a whole new can of worms for several lawsuits moving forward, and it somewhat shreds the idea of the free press, because the First Amendment protects a free press to report on things and have protection from this sort of liability. Not like it or not, Alex Jones is a member of the press. InfoWars is a media outlet. And if he and his organization can be dragged through the mud under this type of scrutiny, then the legal and liability protections that are afforded to groups like CNN, MSNBC, etc., they also evaporate under the same. Anybody can claim, grave emotional damage due to participation in the Iraq War under false pretenses, or any of the. This gives legs to relitigating the Covington kids lawsuit
Right.
that was recently thrown out. Any of the January 6th participants that have been dragged through the mud as insurrectionists may have a ground to sue left-wing media. I mean, this whole thing, I don't think they understand the kraken that they've unleashed if this is allowed to stand.
So, I mean, where is it at then? He was deemed guilty and now it's going to go to appeals, or?
It's in a bit of a legal gray area, because he was ruled with a default ruling by the judge, and the judge in this case is a clearly biased political activist who is clearly and openly on one side. In the opening statements, the prosecuting attorney was telling the jury that, it's like the family that was there that was suing him were just a prop. The prosecuting attorney was telling the jury that Alex Jones is guilty. We are just here to find out how guilty he is. And the entire point of this exercise is to destroy him, to destroy his organization, and make sure that he can never rebuild it and do what it is that he does ever again. I mean, it's to call it a defamation case, to call it an emotional damages restitution case, has got to be I don't think I've ever seen a more tortured use of the English language than what they're going through. He was given a default ruling, even though one of his attorneys, Robert Barnes, who was unfortunately not representing him in this case, but is familiar with Alex Jones and with the InfoWars organization, has went on numerous TV and radio interviews and podcasts explaining that the default judgment issued by the judge in this case was it was unfounded because the judge's assertion is that Alex Jones failed to comply with the discovery process.
Mhm.
And the reason that she says that he failed to comply with the discovery process is because she and the prosecution is convinced that they have documents that they don't have. And by failing to give them documents that they don't have, she ruled in default. Robert,
What about those oopsie emails that his lawyer happened to send to the other prosecutor?
So there is a there's a process. I think that Robert Barnes explained there's a process called colloquium,
Mhm.
where if a defense attorney sends information to the prosecution under the discovery process that can be considered attorney-client privileged information, then the defense attorney can inform the prosecuting attorney to strike this information, and it is inadmissible as evidence. So, and apparently that's what they did, but the judge is allowing it to go forward anyway. The whole thing, it's like a Soviet star chamber. If you've actually been able to sit down and watch some raw and unedited portions of this trial, it is clearly biased in one direction. The judge is an activist who is seeking to utterly destroy Alex Jones and InfoWars. The discovery process, according to Robert Barnes, Alex Jones turned over more documentation than any client that he has ever had to work with, possibly more discovery material than anybody in U.S. history in these types of civil cases. So everything is being stacked against the man, and the media circus surrounding the courtroom proceedings. There are 3 big budget movie grade cameras in the courtroom. One is focused on the judge, one is focused on the stand, and one is focused on the jury. And they are making a documentary out of this. This is going to be used for public relations and propaganda purposes, because they want to not only destroy Alex Jones and InfoWars, but they want to destroy smaller media outlets that are, doing something similar, or, at least defying the narrative.
Well, why do you think they sent those on to the January 6th committee? That seemed weird.
Well, I believe, from what Alex Jones has been saying in the last couple of days in regards to it, the prosecuting attorney was lying. They don't have his entire phone records from the last 2 years. They only have snippets because of that colloquium process and the attorney-client privileged information, and also trying to use it to scare and trip up Alex on the stand. But if you watch that thing, he's like, "We have your whole phone," and Alex is like, "Yeah, because I gave it to you." and he kind of just you could tell that the prosecuting attorney wasn't expecting that response. He was expecting something different, and he continued to say things like, "Oh, we got you. We got these messages and everything," as if he was on a script. That Alex's response of "Yeah, because I gave it to you" just kind of tripped him up. It's like inserting a line that's not supposed to be there in a movie script. And you could watch that whole exchange, and you could tell that this is going to be used for propaganda purposes.
Well, I mean, I think the problem was Alex was just off on where the government was involved. I think since then we figured out they're not creating whole fake events. They're just weaponizing autists to go shoot things up. And I mean, I don't know if he should have to pay some sort of price for, surely that had to piss those families off that he was saying that.
Mm-hmm.
And he stuck to his guns for such a long time on it. I mean, I don't know. It's just Alex making a dumb choice like he's prone to do sometimes, it seems.
Right. But, like I said, they're opening up a can of worms for any media outlet to be sued for incorrect information.
Right.
You know,
Well,
even sincerely held, you know, they can accuse a wrong opinion or incorrect information of being a lie. You know, being wrong is not the same as lying.
yeah.
A lie is a willful act. Being wrong is just not having the correct information. And what they're doing is they're saying that Alex Jones being wrong and sharing his opinions on the wrong information that he had is a willful lie. And so allowing that to stand, you know, they're not going to like where this could potentially go.
Well, and I sent you an article about another dangerous media precedent. Did you read that one about the Ukraine and CBS?
No, I don't
Where
know.
the CBS is going to run a story on how only like 30% of the weapons being sent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
CBS is going to run a story on how only 30% of the weapons being shipped to the Ukraine are making it to frontline troops. They had their sources, they had video, whole story, and the Ukrainian government said, no, we don't want you to run that. And CBS caved on it.
Yep.
So now not only is the media caving to our own government's demands, apparently they'll cave to other government demands when it comes to reporting on stories. This is a big story. I mean, there was multiple people. I found the actual documentary, the actual footage from it and the story on it. And there was multiple people in the Ukraine, you know, generals, whatever, just saying, yeah, we don't know where the hell all these weapons are going.
Yep.
So we're just dumping all these weapons over there and nobody knows where they're going.
Right.
But the Ukrainian government decided that it shouldn't be reported and it was shut down. And I haven't seen that story pop up anywhere else either.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad precedent to set that, you know, the current thing is taking precedent over the truth, you know. And like you're saying, you know, 30% of the weapons that we've dumped, I believe, as the United States has provided the same amount of money and military aid as Russia's yearly defense budget.
Yeah.
I looked those numbers up a while back, and this is back when we were the total of our foreign aid to Ukraine for this was like 59 billion. And I looked up Russia's defense budget. Russia's defense budget is 64 billion.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've topped that by now. So anybody who's saying like, oh, why is Russia doing such a bad job over in the Ukraine? It's like, well, we've given them more money than Russia's entire defense budget. That might have something to do with it. But if only 30% of those weapons are making it to their destination, that kind of evens things out.
I wonder where the fuck they're going.
I imagine they're being sold on the black market. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop and the chickens to come home to roost when one of those Javelin missiles makes its way back to this country and blows something important up. Because that shit can happen.
Yeah, I'm curious what the supply chain is out of the Ukraine for that weaponry. If it's making its way to the Middle East, I mean, it just seems so crazy that there's that much weaponry. And this is everything. They were saying, like, you know, small arms are sending over, bulletproof vests, Kevlar helmets, you know, everything is just ending up going into this black hole of who knows where it goes.
Yeah, that whole area is just a black hole for military equipment. Eastern Europe, you know, there's all sorts of things just floating around. I'm sure some of it's going to the Middle East. I'm sure the Russians are getting a hold of it and reverse engineering or finding exploits for equipment. China's probably got some of it. I mean, every tin pot dictator is more than likely swooping in to snatch up whatever it is that they can.
It's crazy. It's like every other week, you know, there's some story, this many more billions sent to Ukraine. I mean, it's no wonder Russia can't do shit over there. They're like, it's basically the Western world versus Russia at this point in a proxy of Ukraine.
Right.
Which there's no way. I don't see. We talked about this a long time ago. What's their way out of this? and we at least could see how they could. I don't know what their way out is now, because it seems like the Ukraine's pushing on Belarus and Crimea at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um,
Although I did hear something yesterday or the day before yesterday about the casualty rates. The Ukrainians are losing men hand over fist.
mhm.
So this might be their I'm blanking on that. The big push that the Germans did in World War I, where they broke out and they made an enormous advance forward.
Isn't that through Verdun?
Maybe, but they made this huge advance and everybody thought the war would be over, but then they quickly ran out of steam because the high command had told all the troops, they're like, listen, it's now or never, and we're going to give everything we got into it. And they didn't break through, even though they gave it all. It looked like they were going to at first, but then they petered out. So I figure in the next week or two, this big push that Ukraine is doing might peter out too.
I mean, geez, it's got to be about like trench warfare over there right now, with just their artillery, seeing who can pick the other's artillery off first. Yeah, I mean, conceivably this could go on for years, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, we keep dumping money into it. Eventually, instead of like dropping bombs on them, we'll just start dropping pallets of cash and crushing the Russians.
I mean, at some point, the Russians got to start thinking, we might need to throw some tactical nukes in here or something. And I wonder if the rest of the world's got the balls to call them on that if they decide to do it.
In a way, I think that's might be what they're pushing towards. Like, we're going to get Russia's nuts in a vice and make them use the forbidden nukes. And then we'll have an excuse to go all in.
Yeah, that seems like such a waste. I mean, Russia's such a bizarre boogeyman for everybody, when it's so obvious that China has been the main one this whole time.
Right.
And winter's coming up. I don't think Europe's going to be able to afford the energy prices on that. I mean, this probably needs a tidy wrap up by winter, or it's just going to really go to shit.
Right. There are European leadership kind of whispering in the back rooms about how Zelensky needs to come to the table because Western Europe is going to freeze to death. It wouldn't be the case if the United States was still energy independent. Thanks, Biden.
Yeah.
We could sell them oil if we had the oil to sell, but we don't because the current occupant of the White House is a dementia
Well,
patient.
and the euro is just tanked against the dollar at this point too. I mean, for them to buy American petrol with the euro in the toilet, I don't know that's much better than them paying Russia's jacked up prices at this point.
Yeah, they're in kind of a bad situation, and it really seems like this whole war is being prosecuted as like a Zelensky vanity project. He's like some of you may die, and that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Yeah, I mean, and, another energy crisis that when did I bring up the water shortage in the Southwest? That's been 6 months now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's everywhere now.
Mhm.
There, and people are starting to panic on that one.
Yep.
They're saying they might hit Deadpool in the next couple of years, and at that point, there's no water or electricity going to the Southwest.
We truly are in clown world times, aren't
Yeah, tie that into a severe winter popping up over Europe. I mean, you could have a huge mess when it comes to energy.
we? Mm-hmm.
And we'll just have to see what happens. I mean, there's no backup plan for if that water level gets too low.
Right. They need nuclear energy is what they need down there.
Right, but even then, that doesn't solve their water issue.
Right.
You
Combination of nuclear power for the energy and desalination out of the sea for for like
Yeah,
drinking water.
start that 10 years ago. That's not going to help in 2 years. But
I got peanut.
oh,
We're
she's got a
cranky.
fuss, a little cranky. Other clown world issue. Biden. He just seems to be getting. He seems to be getting worse and worse.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he?
Did you see the footage yesterday where Schumer had a row of people and he was shaking their hands? He went down the road, shook everybody's hand, and Joe Biden put his hand back out like he forgot it was already shaken 10 seconds ago.
Yeah, that and the coat issue.
I might have missed that one. What was the coat?
He was coming out of Marine One, the helicopter, and he started like trying to put his jacket on, and he was like spinning in circles trying to get his arm into the coat, and his wife had to like stop him and put his coat on for him. And it's sad. This is the president of the United States, and he's clearly not there anymore. And everybody in his orbit needs to be prosecuted for elder abuse at a minimum.
Somebody said Hoover's going dry. Can't wait to get fusion cores for power.
Yes.
Fusion cores and dead bodies. That's what you're going to find in there. They keep finding a different body every week now, it seems.
Oh, from the lake drying up and
the old mob dumping ground.
Yeah, that or Lake Tahoe.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, Biden seems to be rapidly deteriorating at this point, and we still got 2 more years to go.
Yeah. The I think that the midterms are going to be a real turning point. That after the midterms, if the Democrats maintain control, I think he's going to resign in grace, or at least as much as he can. Mm-hmm. And if the Republicans end up giving the Democrats a shellacking like everybody is expecting, I think he's going to be 25th Amendmented out. But they're waiting for that midterm to come so they can have at least, the semblance of a unified front.
Right. And speaking of future presidents, I mean, what do you think this raid does for Trump?
Well, in the short term, it's energized his base. He's seeing a surge of support. There was a lot of donations being made to a future campaign or some other PACs or something like that. The rhinos are still rhinos, or at least the anti-Trump Republicans are still anti-Trump Republicans, but the more middling or squishy ones like Kevin McCarthy and a few of the other, both in the House and the Senate, that were, on his side when it was convenient, and they would talk shit about him when it was convenient. They've kind of galvanized in his corner now. And I mean, honestly, anybody, a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, anybody should be kind of worried about this, because what they're claiming they raided his house for would have been easily done with a subpoena for the records that they were looking to add to the National Archives. And according to somebody from the archives, a spokesman from the archives, they were cooperating with the archives. So this early morning armored vehicle, kitted up FBI phalanx raiding Mar-a-Lago it's all for show. And unfortunately, there's a couple of theories floating around. Well, the first one is that the FBI and whoever was telling them to do this thought that by making a big show of raiding Mar-a-Lago, it would telegraph to the people out there that we're going after Trump and it's serious and everything. It's had the exact opposite effect.
Right.
He's gotten more support of it. And the other theory is that Trump was aware that there was a mole in his organization, and he was using this to smoke them out. And the FBI reacted in a way that even Trump didn't anticipate they would. Mm-hmm. He told different people that he was suspecting of spying on him, different things. And then when the FBI did what they did, he's like, okay, this person is the one
Right.
informing to the feds.
Somebody says, saw a poll that showed 60% of independents polled said the rate is more likely to get them to vote in the midterms. That is huge. Usually independents stay home in midterms.
Yep.
The pre-breach photo op was probably lit though. It's a good thing Trump didn't have a dog there at the time. It might have got shot.
Oh, they were looking for it.
Yeah. Where's his dog? I noticed that really energized Trump's base, and that is just a rabid base that you do not want to throw any bones to get them going.
Right. But even more so than his base, you've got members of the media, former.
And Hobbs hit something on his computer. We'll give him a second to see if he comes back. There he is. Welcome back.
I did no such thing. It just blinked out.
So anyways, you said members of, that's all I heard.
So members of the media, of former law enforcement agencies, and even like some Democrat politicians have come out and said that this FBI raid was well uncalled for. Andrew Cuomo, disgraced former governor of New York, came out and said that if the FBI doesn't release the affidavits and the search warrant details, then this is going to reflect very poorly on them going forward. And God forbid I say I agree with Andy Cuomo, but
I mean,
you're right.
It just looks like they were weaponizing the FBI to harass Trump from, a middle of the road person like me that isn't really a fan of Trump or the other side. Whoa.
We're having all sorts of issues tonight, aren't we?
I guess. And I don't know why they would think that it would be a good idea.
No, it was a terrible idea.
It's like they have no understanding of how middle America thinks, and they never will. So now every single Trump supporter is re-energized coming to the midterms. I thought it seemed like DeSantis was probably gaining some ground, but I think this probably took all his gains away at this point.
Yeah, I heard a rumor. Actually, I heard it on Alex Jones 2 or 3 weeks ago. Robert Barnes actually said that the deal has apparently been made behind closed doors, that the 2024 Republican ticket is going to be Trump DeSantis, and that Trump.
That's not terrible because Trump is old.
Yeah.
Say what you will about Trump, he seems to have all his mental faculties, but he's old and lives on Diet Coke and cheeseburgers. That heart's on borrowed time.
Yeah. I'm guessing from what Robert Barnes was saying is that the agreement is that it's going to be Trump DeSantis, and that Trump is going to take point on foreign policy. And to be honest, that was kind of his strong suit, was domestic energy and foreign policy. He did an admirable job on those two areas with the diplomacy and everything that he did, and that DeSantis was going to take point on more domestic issues, which seems to be in his wheelhouse with the way that he's kind of cleaning house down in Florida. So, as a libertarian, I can't go rah, rah, rah for the Republican team, but rah, rah, rah.
That's not a bad lineup.
No.
That cures a couple of Trump's weaknesses. Yeah, I don't, and if Trump keels over in office, DeSantis isn't a terrible option. It's not like Kamala.
Yeah, he's got his head in the right place. A lot of Okay, good. He's got his head in the right place a lot of the time. It's just sometimes he's a little heavy-handed.
DeSantis.
Yeah.
Well, he kind of, the way Florida's government is set up and the Republicans control everything down there, he kind of gets to rule as a bit of a dictator.
Mhm.
But what he seems to be doing is working. At least in Florida. I doubt it'd translate to the rest of the nation, but he seems smart enough that he could tone it back if he had to.
Right, and the added benefit of that is if you get somebody like DeSantis taking point on the domestic issues, and the people in places like New York and California don't necessarily want what he's selling, there might be a re-energized interest in the idea of federalism, which benefits everybody.
Occasionally Democrats do get an interest in federalism. It depends on the issue, though.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, get your hand, my body, my choice. It's like, yeah, that states' rights thing's kind of cool, isn't it?
Yeah, unless it's about masks, then it's
Guns.
whatever, or guns, or
Yeah.
monkeypox. I'm surprised we haven't started having monkeypox lockdowns in some of these states.
Well, that's because you could easily point on the graph who is mostly
homophobic.
affected. Exactly. Yeah. It's
It was like, did you see that ad from New Zealand where they didn't want to say it was gay people, but it was like, do what you can to prevent monkeypox, and it showed a guy thinking about what he was going to be doing that weekend. It was like a little cartoon,
yeah.
and his thoughts on the weekend were him in a gay orgy, and then it had like an X through it.
This is a real thing from New Zealand.
Yeah,
Oh my god.
they didn't come right out and say it, but they skirted the issue there.
Right. Yeah.
It was like, think about what you're doing to prevent monkeypox, and it's like, no gay orgies, I get.
You just the San Francisco city government has declared a public health emergency, which inconveniences everybody, but of course politely suggesting that a small demographic curtail their degeneracy for a couple of weeks. That's a bridge too far. Let's punish everyone instead.
Yeah, I mean, monkeypox isn't like coronavirus where you could breathe in a room and infect people. It's you gotta rub up against them. I mean, how hard, if for some reason they said, no sucking titties for 2 weeks, we'll knock this out, I'll be like, all right. if they come down with the titty pox,
yeah, this is my cross to bear.
All right, you got it. Why I don't know. It's just, I had no idea gay men were getting that much action, that they can't even go without it for 2 weeks. There's just dick falling all over the place around them. They can't get away from it.
I guess so. Right? It's crazy.
Rub up against them is one way to put it. Yeah, I was trying to be
diplomatic with it.
Diplomatic with it.
Yeah, it's kind of I don't want to get too what. You're probably not wrong. But it's oh god, where was I going? Shit. I had a funny point to make and now I lost it.
I don't know. It just goes to show that they have, everything they said during COVID from the leftists was bullshit. If it saves just one life, here's a thing that you could literally knock out if 2 weeks of precautions were taken.
Yeah.
By certain groups, but they're just not even going to come out and say it. They don't want to just come out. They won't come out and say. They would probably lock down the entire country as opposed to telling gay people to lay out the butt sex for 2 weeks.
And now I remember what the funny point was. I was gonna say, it's like I don't want to push religion on anybody, but a pox upon your house. I mean, pretty literal here. I'm waiting for the pillar of fire to wipe San Francisco and whatever the sister city is.
Well,
of
and the
San
thing is,
Francisco.
they always bitched about this with the coronavirus. Well, the longer it's floating around, the more contagious it's going to become. Well, a respiratory virus is a lot different than a pox virus. If a pox virus becomes more contagious, that is 10 times worse. If it starts spreading through droplets, I mean, that could happen with monkeypox. It's going to be popping up everywhere.
Yeah.
But,
So I saw somebody in the chat brought up the other bit of government overreach aside from
the ATF?
not the ATF, the IRS.
Oh, IRS? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
yeah, here was the comment.
87% more IRS agents as shadow ATF.
That's why I say
boys.
ATF, IRS, same thing at this point, apparently.
Yep. Yeah, it's
We need to be doing the Ron Swanson thing and applying for these jobs and just intentionally doing them as poorly as possible.
Yes, I think that is one way that we can go about making this right. Being an IRL shit poster amongst ATF agents would be like, hey, you know what we're doing? It's kind of like stealing, guys. Have you ever thought that maybe people might want to keep that 30% of their income? I mean, just how would you like it if somebody took 30% of what you make? You got to ease them into it.
They framed it as they're going after all the billionaires. There's like what? How many?
900.
Yeah, 900 billionaires, and they need 87,000 people to keep track of them.
No, you sweet, sweet summer child. Those 87,000 IRS agents are to audit your Etsy shop.
I
and
thought
the shit that you sell on eBay.
the great graphic I saw was where it overlaid poverty levels with IRS audits.
Right.
And it was almost exactly the same map.
Yep. Willingness to use deadly force was in there. Well, okay, so Plains Prepper says the job descriptions were very sketch. The willingness to use deadly force was in there. So I was listening to the Dan Bongino show today, and he's a former Secret Service agent. And federal agents are what's called GS 1811s. Whether you're an FBI agent, Secret Service agent, IRS agent, whatever it is, you're all GS 1811s. And those job descriptions are all the same across the board. So that isn't necessarily all that suspicious. What is suspicious about it is both the number of the IRS agents being hired as well as the budget increase. Prior to this bill or this budget increase or whatever being passed, the IRS's budget was $12 billion, which is insane. A very large amount of money that your taxes go to pay the people who collect your taxes. Figure that one out. That's like taxception. But $12 billion has jumped up to $80 billion. So they're going to take these 87,000 people and this $80 billion, and they're going to be conducting as many audits of as many people as they can in order to justify those expenses, which is why those poverty levels overlap so wonderfully with IRS audit maps, because the people who are poor do not have the money to afford the lawyers to find the loopholes to avoid the audit. And that's
one thing I've learned is a benefit of people who have money is easy access to lawyers. They make everything easier. Whenever you have any sorts of trouble, throw a lawyer at it. I mean, sometimes the problem even goes away once a lawyer steps in. And you're right. Those poor shitheads that barely above the poverty line are not going to be able to get a lawyer.
Right, unless you find a good guy willing to work pro bono, or go to you guys out there are worried about an audit or wanting to lower your tax bill or anything, and you're wanting to give one of the good guys some extra support, go to jonestaxrelief.com and get with American tax experts, I think is the name of the organization. But yeah, they're these guys that they're not CPAs, they're actual tax code lawyers, and the way that they get paid is if they save you money, they take a percentage of it. So they have every incentive to do it right. And if you use the jonestaxrelief.com, then that gives a little bit to Alex Jones too.
Well, do you know how much does that increase the IRS? What percentage is that increasing their employees by? 87,000. Is that just a drop in the bucket, or have you seen anything about that?
It's substantial. And I think it might even triple or quadruple the number of agents that they have. Because I mean, if they're going from 12 billion to 80 billion dollars, then I would imagine that it would be a similar level of increase in personnel as well. I could be wrong, but it would make sense to me.
Well, the other crazy thing is, where are they thinking that 87,000 people are just going to appear out of thin air and want to work for the IRS? I mean, it can't pay that well.
Unemployment's low. Oh, well, and maybe that's why they need $80 billion. So
they got to pay a stupid amount of money.
Yeah.
Well, I may end up doing the Ron Swanson if that's the case. I'll work shitty for the IRS for a year. I mean, how long would it take the IRS to figure out you're shitty and fire you think?
I don't know.
I mean, it'd have to take them at least a year or two.
Yeah. Long enough for you to get that bread.
Right. So I guess everybody keep an eye out for those job postings, and we'll be the shittiest IRS agents they've ever seen.
Right, currently
what?
Yeah, so this is more than doubling. Yeah, more than doubling their employees and pentupling their budget.
Yeah, that's the government. We got to spend 80 billion to. I'm curious. Did they put any estimates out what they thought this would bring in, spending 80 billion on enforcement?
At this point, I'm gonna put on my tinfoil cap for a minute. At this point, I don't think they care. I think that this is more about sending a message that we're in charge and fuck you.
Well, I'd be curious to overlay that IRS audit map to percentage of minorities too.
If you looked at it, it was all the West Coast, the Deep South, on over to the Southeast. So yeah, a lot of Hispanics, a lot of Southern blacks, a lot of.
How is that not fucking racist? I don't.
Well, I mean, are they doing it because the people are minorities, or does it just happen to be where the minorities are at? I mean, yeah, you could play their game and you could be like, oh, this is racist because minorities are getting caught up in this trap. But it's kind of the same argument that as much as I love Maj Touré and his anti-gun control thing, saying that all gun control is racist, like today, no, it's not. Just because the majority of the people who get caught up with gun control and the problems associated with gun control are inner city minorities doesn't mean that those gun control laws are in place today to target those inner city minorities. So saying like all gun control is racist is trying, for the same reason that these audits saying they would be racist. It's trying to play their game. But like Mark Twain said, that when you try to wrestle a pig in the mud, the pig has a good time and you just end up dirty.
I don't know. That goes back to my whole theory that the KKK didn't really go away. They just joined the Democrat Party.
They were always the Democrat Party.
I mean, but they're registered D now.
They always were.
They're just pulling the strings on the party at this point. I mean, you could frame that as such a racist action by the government to target minorities. It's not even a stretch,
right?
And I don't know, the leftist mindset where we live here, where Lake McConaughey is, right?
I have a general idea.
It's a huge lake in the middle of the state here where we're at here in Nebraska, and people from Colorado love to come up here. So I went there this weekend. I was talking with a business owner there, and I was like, well, how's business? And he's like, well, it's not so hot because a lot of the Hispanics from Denver started coming up. And so then all the white suburban Denverites decided they didn't want to come anymore. And your white suburban Denverite is most likely a registered Democrat. And, they just have this soft racism that permeates them and they don't even realize it.
All right. Like the good old fashioned hard Southern racism, there was they knew why they did it. It's just like, I just don't like them and I wish to be away from them. The soft suburban white liberal racism, it's like they're very NIMBYist and they're like, I don't want to be around those people. But if you asked them why, they'd be afraid to tell you why, or they wouldn't even know why. Like if you ask an old school Southern racist why he's a racist, he'll just flat out be like, yeah, I'm a racist. I don't like those people. And fuck them, But if you ask one of these like soft liberal suburbanites, be like, oh, well, those people, they bring crime. They're not. It's like, okay, yeah, you just don't like brown people. Is that what it is? And then you really just hit them over the head with it.
Well, because I was thinking, these white suburban Denver people probably don't deal with a lot of Hispanics where they're at. They're in these little insulated communities on the outsides of Denver. And if they don't want to deal with Hispanics, they don't go into downtown area. But if they go out to the lake, they're forced to, and they decided they don't want to.
Gosh, reverse gentrification or something.
Yeah, I don't know. What do we have popping up over here? Yes, because suburb. And those people. In Iowa, we have the common decency to whisper our racial slurs. There you go. Well, these weren't Nebraskans doing it. These were people from Colorado. So I don't think, where I'm at, it's very blended. Grand Island seems to be pretty blended too.
Yep.
But you get those big areas like Denver, you can just insulate yourselves. We're getting up on an hour here, Hobbs. Did we hit on everything that we want to do for the week? I know we missed a lot of weeks before, but it's old news by now.
Yeah, probably not, but it's 10 o'clock and I got to be up at 4:30 in the morning. So
shit.
Yeah, I got an hour-long commute now.
That's right. So we'll be back next week. We'll try and get Hobbs' camera issue figured out. And we won't have feedback when we start the show next time. Thanks for hanging with us for, let's see, it's been almost 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming back after our hiatus, and we'll see you again next week.